Hi friends. I absolutely love to learn new things, and I'm astonished pretty much each and every day by the amount I don't know and that I get to learn. This past weekend, I got to see the show Come From Away, based on a true story. And I didn't know anything about that story until maybe a year or two ago. It had never occurred to me in 20 years to ask what had happened to the planes that were diverted from US airspace when they closed and wouldn't let planes fly anymore on that day. It's a remarkable story, and it was such a gift to get to watch the story, to learn a bit about it, and then come home and learn even more. Sometimes we learn through books, sometimes through documentaries. I'm not going to be ashamed to say that sometimes on TikTok I will hear about something and look it up and learn more about it. And yes, there are some times that it's children's books that will start to spark my interest in something. This is a book I found recently called Pies from Nowhere: How Georgia Gilmore Sustained the Montgomery Bus Boycott. And I am well aware that there are so many people that were an important part of the civil rights movement that we do not know their names or their stories. I know that. But this was such a great one, and I wanted to be able to share a little bit of it with you today. We know the name Rosa Parks and how she was arrested for refusing to give up her seat. But she was not the first person who was arrested because they were fighting the segregation laws. And in this story, we know that Georgia had already been mistreated on the bus and had already said, I am not riding it anymore. But when Rosa Parks was arrested and there was the Montgomery bus boycott, that's when Georgia said, I am going to do something. Now, she didn't want to get up and speak. She didn't want to be in the spotlight. But what she could do, what she learned from her mother, was to bake. And so she would bake and she would cook and she would sell this food in order to raise money. And she had her friends helping her, and they became the Club From Nowhere. And they would raise this money for gas, for cars, for maintenance, so that people could still have transportation around Montgomery during this boycott. The reason that they were called the Club From Nowhere is that whenever she would donate this money to the people who needed it, who were out there as part of this boycott, they would say, where did this money come from? And she would say, came from nowhere, that Club From Nowhere. Her work inspired other clubs, other organizations, other groups of people to come together to say, what can we do? Now, part of this, she did end up testifying about her role, about what happened to her on this bus. What happened was that she had paid for a bus ride. The bus driver made her get off the bus and go in the back door, as was customary at that time. But before she got to the back door, that bus driver pulled away and left her standing on the road, even though she had paid for that ride. So she had testified, and when that happened, she lost her job. She was fired. And so Dr. King encouraged her to start her own restaurant, to cook, and that is exactly what she did. Her restaurant and her home became a safe space for civil rights leaders to meet, and it became this gathering place in her community where people knew they could come and get a meal cooked with love, and so her whole community, whites and blacks, could come together and eat together. She was a remarkable woman, and when the 25th anniversary of the bus boycott came, they were going to have a celebration, and so she cooked macaroni and cheese and fried chicken, and unfortunately, she died before this happened, and so they used all of that food that she had cooked at her funeral to celebrate her life. The place where she cooked, her restaurant, again, people came and gathered there. They knew they were safe there, people in her community. She ended up cooking for some remarkable people. Dr. King came all the time to eat with her, Robert Kennedy, President Lyndon Johnson, and once President JFK came and got her food as takeout to take onto Air Force One. Let's keep learning about these remarkable people and their contributions to our world, because this was someone whose mama taught her to cook, and she said, I know how to cook and I know how to love people, and that's exactly what she did. She said, you cannot be afraid if you want to accomplish anything. You have to have the willing, the spirit, and above all, you got to have the get up. That's Georgia Gilmore. Keep learning, friends. Keep loving. And if you're like Georgia, keep baking. Bye, everybody.